Hi, I'm Aaron Dean, and this is Advocate Today. There's a new report that shows most Americans disapprove of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, and it's becoming a key election issue. A new poll from CNN conducted by SSRS found that 64% of adults disapprove of the Dobbs ruling. 29% of Americans say that they would only vote for a candidate who shares their view on abortion. That's up 3% from last year. Among those who support the decision, 34% now say that they'd like to see a nationwide abortion ban instead of leaving it up to the states. That's up from the 20% last year. Abortion rights advocates have won a critical victory in Ohio, defeating a measure that would have made their efforts to protect women's rights more difficult. In a special election, voters decided a proposal known as Issue 1. It would have raised the threshold needed to amend the state's constitution. The threshold to pass an amendment is 50% plus 1. Issue 1 would have made that threshold 60%. Many see it as a victory for reproductive rights and democracy for Ohioans.
111 years ago, when the state passed the constitutional amendment that said that we would be able to make those decisions, it made it possible for a person like me to even cast the ballot. So I'm so happy. I'm so happy that my brothers and sisters across the entire state of Ohio said, yes, you still matter. It's not those interests that are special. The Ohioans said that every person in this state is special, and we are going to continue to have the right to determine what we want to have happen here. Because why? The majority still rules.
Ohio, we did it. We did it! Tonight is a major victory for democracy in Ohio. The majority still rules in Ohio. And the people's power has been preserved.
Together, we've delivered this unbelievable and amazing, but yes, absolutely true result of what Ohioans really want. The energy and the enthusiasm we've witnessed in the last few weeks has been both overwhelming and inspiring for myself, as I'm sure for many of you.
The White House is even celebrating this victory.
Ohioans came out in an off-year election and literally rejected what Republicans, elected officials were trying to do, what special interests were trying to do in the state, which is basically weaken voters' rights, weaken the rights of voters in the state. And so what we saw last night is such an important victory as we head to a critical vote, which should be made by the people, decision that should be made by the people. When you think about how women in Ohio are going to they're going to vote to decide if women in Ohio is going to have the right, the freedom to make a decision on their reproductive right, to make a decision on their health care. So this is, again, a win for our democracy.
20 years ago, President George W. Bush signed PEPFAR into law. That is short for the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. PEPFAR has saved millions of lives, and many call it Bush's greatest accomplishment. But PEPFAR is now in danger, and Dr. Anthony Fauci is raising the alarm. The Advocate's John Casey has more on the important legacy of PEPFAR. Let's just jump right into it, okay? Can you please explain PEPFAR and why it's so significant?
Okay, well, PEPFAR stands for the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, and it's actually celebrating the 20th anniversary of its passage and being signed into law by George W. Bush in 2003. And the overall goal of it is to end the global AIDS pandemic, help end the global AIDS pandemic as a public health issue by the year 2030. And it's a significant program in terms of global health policy. It perhaps is one of the greatest that's ever been enacted. So it's vitally important. It has done extraordinary work in the 20 years that it has been around.
And so this was a Republican program for all intents and purposes?
Okay, yes. Well, It was signed into law by George W. Bush, which many people consider to be his greatest achievement. And I believe he would say that too. And Dr. Fauci says that as well. So it was passed on a bipartisan front in Congress. And it's like any other program that is funded, it needs to be renewed by Congress every year. And because it's been wildly successful, I mean, it has already saved 25 million lives. It's called authorization bill. So it's always been reauthorized every year. And this year, some extremist groups and anti-abortion groups have sent letters to the Republicans on the committee that would be responsible for passage of reauthorization, claiming without any evidence that the funds are being misused, and most prominently that they're being used for paying for abortions overseas. And that is simply not true.
Mm. So is that why Republicans are threatening not to reauthorize?
Yes, they are threatening not to reauthorize politically too. I mean, it's AIDS and HIV, and it's in Africa. And so, the Republican Party has changed so much in 2003, obviously. And the program is a bit costly. I mean, in fiscal year 2023, it was $6.9 billion. But that money goes for bilateral aid, HIV efforts, and about $2 billion of that goes for multilateral, which means around the world, and $50 million goes for the UN AIDS initiative, and $2 billion to the Global Fund for AIDS. So the program sustains many programs around the world that go to combat HIV and AIDS. It's the linchpin for so many programs, and that is why 25 million lives have been saved. So for political reasons, and most especially probably bending to the whim of the extremists and anti-abortion letters that these Republicans have received, they have threatened to not reauthorize the program, which would be around $7 billion that they refuse to fund it for this year.
And, and why is this a paradoxical, and what happens if it's not reauthorized? Excuse me.
Okay, so that's when I had Dr. Fauci called me Friday night, and we had a nice catch up. And so, he's very concerned about this. Is his signature piece too. And in 2001, excuse me, I'm sorry, and when George W. Bush was president, he tapped Dr. Fauci to spearhead the program, to put it together. So Dr. Fauci spent about two years with his colleagues and people in the government to putting this together. It was a lot of work. There was tremendous surprise, even though Dr. Fauci is retired from government. Now he's not retired personally, he's actually been very busy. But he has followed the developments here, and it would be catastrophic if the plug were pulled from this program. And the reason for that is because 20 million people around the world are receiving antiviral drugs from this program. So it's sustaining the lives of 20 million people. So if you were to suddenly pull the program, 20 million people would be affected, their health, the very health, their lives. And why he said it's paradoxical is because one of the groups responsible for right now freezing the reauthorization process is the anti-abortion groups, these pro-life groups. And if they are so hell-bent on being pro-life, he wondered then why they would put the lives of 20 million people at risk.
Thanks so much for watching Advocate Today. Download the app in the Apple or the Google Play Store to stream us live. And you can even subscribe on our YouTube channel. For the Advocate channel, I'm Aaron Dean, and this was Advocate Today.